Hey, welcome everybody once again to Thursday Night Throwdown. It is episode number 2. It is Thursday, I almost said July 9th. Looking forward to summer, I guess. January 9th. My name is Chris Maloney, your host, alongside Shawn Bates of the Scumbags of Wrestling. Say hi there, Shawn.
How's everybody doing?
All right. So if anybody watched last week, you will notice that maybe the intro had changed a little bit. Not necessarily AC/DC got in touch with me, but Sony got in touch with me through Facebook as well as YouTube. So anybody looking to do a podcast or video cast or whatever down the road, make sure that the music that you're using has not had millions and millions and millions of downloads. So anyways, this week it is the Flatliners. I've been a fan of them for probably the better part of 13 years. They are the outro music as well. So give them a shout out on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, social media, all that sort of stuff. Shawn, how's your week been?
Yeah, not too bad. Kind of quiet. I'm wrapped up my week for work. Short 4-day weekend.
Yeah, 4-day weekend. I had 17 days off, went back for 3. And then next thing you know, I was exhausted by day 2. It's funny how when you have that relaxation, that vacation mode, next thing you know, it's just kind of like, holy crap, it's you go back to work, you try to live real life again, and it's kind of hard. But
I sometimes try to remember what you do for work.
Yeah, that's true too. In saying that, with regards to what has been going on in the wrestling world, you'd have to be sleeping under a rock if you didn't know New Japan Pro Wrestling Wrestle Kingdom 14 just took place. Matter of 3 days, huge match results, huge angles taking place. Shawn, did you catch any Wrestle Kingdom or see the results at all?
I saw some of the results. I've seen some highlights. I'm just trying to get to be able to see the actual events. It helps if I can find a stream that allows me to cast. That way I can play around with other things and watch it on my TV. But I haven't found one that allows me to do both at the same time and multitask.
Yeah, so it's technology of the 2020s. If you're watching this on YouTube, we are on Facebook as well. If you're watching on Facebook, we are on YouTube as well. So give us a watch, give us a listen, because we are on Anchor. I will upload this as an MP3 later on. Cool thing about this show is it's live right now. So if you're watching or watching live right now, you can send us your comments, what you want to see us talk about, any questions you might have about the week, whatever the case may be. Right now I'm going to go in.
The upside with going on Anchor as well, though, even if you don't listen on Anchor, you can get on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and almost a dozen different outlets. So regardless of where you end up listening to podcasts, this is going to be available.
Yeah, that is cool. I've just signed up for Anchor for the Throwdown here, and one of the big things is I keep getting notifications. Hey, you're on, I think, Stitcher now. Hey, you're on Google Podcast. Hey, you're on Spotify. So, and I found out about Anchor through Shawn, which is absolutely cool because the fact is you upload, say, your podcast, and the next thing you know, it's live to the world over like 7 or 8 different streams without you really having to do any more work than just uploading that first podcast. Isn't that right?
Yeah, correct. Like I found a bunch of other ones that are not supported by Anchor, but once it is there, I just have to take the address from Anchor and put it into there, whether it's Podbean or wherever. And once the news shows up, it shoots it off to all these different locations.
Yeah, so we are new, so we are still learning the ropes. Well, as far as me, anyway, as far as the video aspect goes, Shawn, I think you're actually ahead of me with that video thing now. How you do the editing for some of your stuff that you do kind of dumbfounds me, but I'm sure I'll catch up. Anyways, we'll get into some New Japan news right now. Biggest thing that took place, like I said, was Wrestle Kingdom 14 took place on the 4th, as well as the 5th, as well as the 6th for the first time ever. 4th and 5th were nights 1 and night 2. So the 6th would have been New Year's Dash, of course. I didn't watch all of the events. I still haven't watched the Jyushin Thunder Liger ceremony as far as the retirement goes. I have watched 3 matches from night 1, 3 matches from night 2, and then filled myself in with the results online. Biggest takeaway from night 1, and this was absolutely astonishing to me, was Kota Ibushi getting beat by Okada. Shawn, do you remember what you had said last week, whether or not you had called that one?
Yeah, I can't remember offhand. I thought I went with Ibushi.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. So, anyways, Ibushi gets beat by Okada. Tetsuya Naito ends up winning against Switchblade Jay White and winning the IC title. Shawn, you're right about that one. I know that. I think I had picked White in that match. So
Yeah.
I guess I would have went 0 for 2. So that was night 1 as far as those 2 matches go. The other match I watched as well, and a huge fan of this guy is Will Ospreay. Shawn, you familiar with Will Ospreay at all?
Yeah, I'm familiar with Ospreay. I have to honestly say he is a tremendous talent, but at the same time, it's too much spot monkey and too much Cirque du Soleil. I don't know. Maybe it's because I've been hanging out at Tyson Duke's Wrestle Factory. I like the idea of going back old school and actually some chain wrestling instead of chain acrobatics.
No, to each their own. Doug Trentner says, "Hey guys, sure you're familiar with that guy."
Yes, over in Listowel for Midwestern Wrestling.
Yes, and we will touch base with about and possibly with Midwestern Wrestling. Yeah, I got it right this time. Down the road, but I do have a few things I'm going to talk about in the Canadian Independent Wrestling segment of the show. Cool thing is about Wrestle Kingdom is me as a wrestling fan. I love Ospreay. Okay, he is one of the reasons I watch wrestling. He's one of the reasons I kind of mark out for wrestling. He's one of the reasons why I made the decision I'm going to try to go to Japan next year for Wrestle Kingdom. And I posted on my Facebook, and it wasn't just one of those things because I was in the moment. I actually talked to my wife about it, looked into airfare, places to stay, travel costs, everything else to see how much it would cost to go for maybe 5 or 6 days. Now, a 17-hour flight, so it's exhausting. The cool thing is I can get almost a direct flight going over. The only stop I'd have is Montreal, and then coming back, it'd be a direct flight. So as long as I can put up with those 17 hours of jet lag, I think I'd be fine, which to me, it'd be a very cool experience off my bucket list. But to be able to see maybe Will Ospreay next year win, the IC title or the World Heavyweight title or whatever they're doing next year would be absolutely cool. Maybe put him and Ibushi in the main event. That would be cool. But on that note, like I said, Ospreay was the other match that I had seen going up against Takahashi. Takahashi ends up winning. And, it's I guess it was one of those things that you could see as a wrestling fan was going to happen anyways. I wasn't sure it was going to happen at this event. But, Shawn, you call Will Ospreay a spot monkey. Any thoughts on Takahashi? Have you seen any of his work at all?
No, I'm not overly familiar with his stuff.
Okay, so he's got very charismatic. Compared to him with Shinsuke Nakamura, which kind of he's got that personality of, but very skilled in the wrestling ring. And unfortunately, he was gone for over a year, and then comes back and wins the New Japan Junior Heavyweight Championship. So props to him.
Basically, what I called was going to happen because that whole comeback story.
Yeah. So we will hopefully see Will Ospreay go to the main level at this point. Coming from that, though, apparently he had suffered an ankle injury. I haven't heard anything more about it, but I guess we'll see in the next couple of months. Ospreay is one of those guys, he'll work hurt. And from the sounds of it, he had hurt himself during the match and then went on for like another 10 minutes, which in the world of professional wrestling isn't uncommon. But yeah, that was the other match I had seen. Night 2, heavy focus, obviously, was Jyushin Thunder Liger's last match, which I had seen. He actually got pinned by Takahashi for the fall there. So, obviously, Liger is one of those guys, Japanese wrestling, whatever the case may be, was going to go and he was going to get pinned by somebody in that match, and Takahashi ended up taking that fall. Shawn, your thoughts on Liger actually giving it up, and whether or not you can see anybody nowadays, because of all the master wrestlers, especially with the Mexican influence, anybody compared to you, Liger, as far as your thoughts go?
Well, Liger giving it up, he's had a tremendous career, so the way they honored him on his way out the door was really spectacular. I did catch a bit of his closing ceremony from New Year's Dash, which was very impressive, what they did for him. As far as anybody modern day, they seem to want to get rid of the mask at the same time, because you had somebody like Andrade show up in NXT and they got rid of it, and now he's doing his shtick that way. Currently, there's basically you got maybe Rey Mysterio be able to compete in equal Liger with a reputation. So that might be the next guy that's honored in that sort of tradition, or what just happened with Liger and his exit. But for any mass wrestler right now, it's very tough to pick somebody that can possibly rise up and get that legendary status.
Yeah, here's a guy when I seen just this small little graphic of, and it was just Liger in his gear and all these promotions he had wrestled for in his whole entire career. And it's like, I can't think of somebody else who's ever done that before. I mean, Jericho comes close because of the places he's been, but Liger, I mean, he was one of those guys that pretty much anybody he was in the ring with trusted him, you know what I mean? And he had that legacy, he had that look, he had that charisma to go along with it, as well as the moveset. So, you know, props for him for having the career he had. But I think I agree with Shawn. I can't think of anybody. The only one that I can think of, and he's not at that stage yet, would be Pentagon, because he's got that same sort of charisma. But, you know, skill set wise and the legacy behind him, not yet.
Yeah, I think he needs a lot more going forward. He is currently maybe one of the best mass wrestlers, along with his brother Ray Phoenix. And if you look at all the titles that they picked up on the independent scene and AAA, and probably eventually he's going to get the AEW tag team titles and stuff like that. But yeah, he got a while to go. But another person that I just thought of that is probably going to be winding down their career and maybe get the same sort of respect as Liger was going to be Ultimo Dragon. And I got to meet him in Toronto with Smash Wrestling.
Yeah, Dragon, that was kind of, I was watching Liger's last match. I was thinking to myself, holy crap, Dragon's actually still wrestling, you know what I mean? And the backstory to what Shawn was just saying there, we were at an event in Toronto last year for Smash Wrestling, right?
Yep, for the Northern.
For the Northern tournament for Smash Wrestling. And I remember seeing Dragon and marking out for him and spending quite a few bucks, you know, autographs and magazines and masks and everything else. And watching him walk around, I was thinking, and Shawn was thinking the exact same thing, how the heck is this guy going to put on a match? Because he was walking around like, you know, he just had the biggest back injury in the world, and he was in his 80s and he was missing his cane, you know what I mean? And watching him get in and out of the ring was the same sort of thing. But next thing you know, he gets in the ring, and it was against M-Dog, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was against M-Dog, and he was just flying around like it was he was in his 20s again. So I think you're right about that.
He can still go, but after the bells, he's just like, whoa.
Yeah, I think you compared him that night to, who was it? Was it Festus?
Yeah.
WWF or WWE?
Yeah, probably.
When they used to ring that bell, and next thing you know, he just got. But anyways, yeah, it. I mean, long story short, it is hard to believe Dragon's still wrestling. So, but he will get that same kind of respect that, you know, Jyushin Thunder Liger had, and you know, the you know, see you later and have a good life and everything else. And anyways, it was a great match to see, but you knew the expectation and you knew Liger was probably taking the pin. The other two matches I watched was didn't watch the Ambrose match, but Ambrose Moxley. Still trying to get used to that. My wife, we were watching last night, AEW, and she's like, isn't that guy? How come he's still, you know? And I was like, no, this is different promotion. His name has changed, but yeah, he's still that same guy. You know what I mean? I didn't see that match, and Shawn, I think you're right about that. No, actually, you're wrong about that. You had predicted, I think, Juice Robinson to go over in night 2.
Yeah, I think so.
For the championship. Yeah. Now, what had happened was Moxley had retained, and the next thing you know, he gets his next challenger, and his next challenger is legend, New Japan legend himself, Minoru Suzuki, who is one of the most toughest hardcore guys in the business. That is going to be a feud. That is going to be, you know, whether or not it is a feud or just one single match, that is going to be something that me as a wrestling fan will want to see, and, you know, we'll sit there at 3:00 in the morning and watch it live. Shawn, any thoughts on Minoru Suzuki or his legacy?
I've only seen, I think, 1 or 2 matches of his. Definitely highly respectable in Japan. And reverse countries, I'd probably be definitely a fan of him and watch a lot of his stuff. But, you know, obviously North American born and bred, I watch a lot of North American stuff because there's so much in abundance. Trying to catch up with other areas is a lot harder.
Yeah, and, you know, it is 2020, and thank God for the internet, because that's a lot of times how I get caught up with these guys. Last year at this time, I was doing a column for PW Torch, And the cool thing about that was it was all about New Japan. So that is how I get involved with liking New Japan so much. There was guys over there that, I had respected and kind of sought out on YouTube and stuff like that. But when you're doing writing and doing the tournaments and stuff like that, and the follow-ups and predictions, everything else, that's how I really got to know about these guys. And Suzuki back then, he's comical too, because the fact is he is one of the toughest SOBs in the business. But if you look at his Instagram, he's all about the swag. He's all about his socks. And for whatever reason, he will Instagram post socks like probably every second or third post, which is absolutely unreal, But personality behind the guy.
Outside of wrestling.
Yeah.
To go with.
So 2 other matches I watched night 2, Tanahashi, Jericho. Jericho's body has seen better days, I'll tell you that much. There was some shaming going on as far as social media went. It is Jericho, so you got to respect the guy, but you might think to yourself, hey, maybe stop doing the old poses that you used to do, especially the one where the guy would be on the ground and all of a sudden he'd do the flex pose. And, nowadays his body doesn't do it too well.
Very Mickey Rourke-ish.
Yeah, it's very Mickey Rourke, and part of it's the hair. I mean, it's funny though, because you see him in New Japan and you see him looking the way he does, with the spikes and the hat and the face paint and everything else, and he looks like kind of a washed up old wrestler. And then you see him last night on AEW, and he looks like that polished champion. You know what I mean? So it's kind of night and day. But he is, one of those guys who's been around since the early 90s. So props to that. But this match against Tanahashi, I really thought Tanahashi was going to win. Jericho ended up taking the victory with the Walls of Jericho. He still call it the Walls of Jericho? Do you know?
Yeah, I think it's, or at least the Walls.
Yeah, so it's the Walls.
He might have the Walls of Jericho trademarked.
Yeah, so he had logged Tanahashi into it. Tanahashi tapped after a good, probably lengthy 3 or 4 minutes. And so Jericho didn't retain, but Tanahashi gets no AEW title shot in the future. Main event time, the other match I watched, and that was, to me, kind of expected, because after Naito won the night 1, I kind of predicted him to win night 2, because you think about it this way, it reminded me of WrestleMania 6. So you got Hogan and Warrior going into the event. Made no sense for Hogan to win the Intercontinental Championship, because how does that make him look any better as a champion? But to bring Warrior up to that level, same sort of thing. With Naito, it's the same sort of thing, because the fact is, he, in a way, he's loved, respected, one of those guys who's never won that title. And to put him over Okada at Wrestle Kingdom 14 was absolutely amazing. Shawn, can you think any comparison as far as North American wrestlers go that Naito would parallel with?
Not offhand at the moment, sorry.
Very unique style. When you see it, he's gifted as an athlete. He's also got that Mexican, moveset with him. But he's got that demeanor, almost like a Moxley does, where he just doesn't seem to give a crap, But as champion, I think he's going to do well. And what they had done was set up as, Naito's sitting there and he's celebrating with the both belts and doing his poses and everything else. Well, next thing you know, he gets attacked by KENTA. KENTA, part of the Bullet Club over there in New Japan. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, now you got these two factions, LIJ and Bullet Club. They can go war to war, but the biggest part of that was the fact is you got now Naito's first established challenger, which is KENTA from formerly NXT. I didn't see KENTA before he went NXT, phenomenal. KENTA NXT to me was, absolutely horrible. And KENTA now has reestablished himself. Shawn, you feel the same way?
Yeah, it's odd to say in that way, because I think what hindered him in North America with NXT was how injury prone he seemed to have been. And how do you get momentum behind him to get him out there and rise up and eventually go to the main roster? But because he kept on getting injured, that kind of hindered him. Going back to Japan, they sort of erased and ignored what he was doing in North America and got him back to where he was when he left. So it's like time stood still and he's back to what he used to do. And as long as he stays injury free, then yeah, he's going to be back and impressive. And that's the guy I was looking forward to when KENTA was first signed.
All right, so we'll wrap up New Japan here, but New Beginning in Osaka is taking place February 9th. Two matches that I'm looking forward to, and Sean, I'll get your predictions on these ones. Moxley versus Suzuki and Naito versus Kenta, both championships on the line. So it's the IWGP US Heavyweight Championship, and then the gold standards, as I'm calling them, but the IC title as well as the heavyweight title. Do you see either one of these guys losing it yet?
Probably not. It's too soon, but if anybody was to win, I'd say Kenta.
So you think Kenta has the possibility to go over?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So wrap up New Japan right there somewhat. Anyways, Sean, your thoughts, and I'm sure you've probably seen this. Time Splitters reunion happening in NXT with Kushida announcing that Alex Shelley is going to be his partner. Any thoughts on that?
It's a good throwback. NXT does sort of need some veterans to bolster up some of the younger talent and be somebody to bounce ideas off of more so than just their coaches. And having them actually in the ring doing stuff, the veterans can help out. So I like the idea of the Time Splitters being back together for this. Whether it means they're going to make it to any significant length into the tournament, they might make it semifinals, but I don't see them being in finals just because of their issues with Gallus.
So you think it's kind of like DX coming back, like talking New Age Outlaws, just for that kind of that old school nostalgic feeling?
Yep.
All right. Speaking of old school, two signings took place actually yesterday, and they were probably signed well before that, but they were announced. Thoughts on Mercedes Martinez, who we both seen at the Summit. Thank you. Last summer, as well as AEW signing Austin Gunn, who is Billy Gunn's son. Thoughts on either of these people and what you think they could do with AEW as well as WWE?
Well, with Austin Gunn, it wasn't a surprise because Billy Gunn works behind the scenes for AEW as one of the coaches. He also has appeared on AEW. I think he's going to be on Dark this week with his son tag teaming. And then he was part of that Battle Royal a few weeks ago. So, yeah, I definitely see it not as a surprise that Austin is there. He might have even been used on one of their early pay-per-views when they were still trying to just do those special events. He might have been in, I think, one of the
he was in one of the original Battle Royals. I remember that.
Yeah. As far as Mercedes Martinez goes, she was also part of one of the Mae Young Classics. So I did see a lot of people going, oh, yeah, WWE's just stealing her from AEW. Well, if AEW really wanted her and wanted to do something with her, they would have done so before now, because I know she was part of also the women's Casino Battle Royale. I believe she was actually number 21 when the women did theirs. That was their opportunity to keep her. They ended up picking up women like Big Swole, who also we saw at the Summit. But for some reason, they might have just thought Mercedes was a guaranteed to be around and let her slip through their hands. But she has worked for WWE, and her experience and what's needed with NXT, I think it's a good signing for WWE.
Yeah, and you think too as well that eventually when her career is over, she'll end up being a coach, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they've got that, and she's one of those ladies who I think I discovered probably 15 years ago through a podcast I was listening to at the time, and the host was a huge fan of hers. So, and she looked completely different from any WWE diva back then, but the amount of respect she's got from seeing her at AEW as well as the Summit, yeah, she'll do good things down there. You are watching Thursday Night Throwdown right now, episode number 2. Myself, I am Chris Maloney, alongside Shawn Bates of the Scumbags of Wrestling. We'll go from that into something that kind of surprised me. And Shawn, I don't know if you heard about this, but this is courtesy of Slam Wrestling. Heart Wrestling Family's Calgary restaurant shuts down, owing staff thousands. And I won't read the whole article, just the first part. Sudden closure just before Christmas of a local restaurant owned by a member of the Heart Wrestling family has left employees missing thousands in wages. Bret Hart's daughter, Alexandra Hart, opened Hart Healthy Food Restaurant, East Village, in October, but the opening was short-lived. Staff received notice the day before the doors permanently closed on December 20th, 5 days before Christmas. Shawn, your thoughts on that story itself? Had you heard about it? And do you think, to save face, do you think the Harts are going to get involved to try to pay all the employees the lost wages and that sour taste they have in their mouth 5 days before Christmas?
Yeah, it definitely is bad publicity for them. I could see Bret stepping up to help cover the negativity in that way. Unless he wants it almost as a life lesson to his daughter, but I don't think they're that sort of way. It is surprising that happened the way it did. I hadn't heard about it. I thought actually what you were going to mention was the fact that Bruce's wife passed away, because I'd seen a posting about that with Jimmy Corderas and a few others. But yeah, it kind of surprised me that all this went down. The Harts have a huge name and reputation in Calgary that I would have thought Bret's daughter would have tried to find some other way instead of tarnishing their legacy in that community.
Yeah, so one of the other things that the article mentioned in closing was multiple employees have filed reports with the Provincial Labor Board since Hart has stopped responding to their emails. On Sunday, a handwritten sign on the front door of the restaurant still read closed for the holidays, and she has not responded to several requests for comment by Post Media. Not the greatest thing in the world for the Harts, because of the fact they're still very relevant in wrestling. But hopefully, one of their family members saves face for this. And I mean, if it was one of my daughters, I would I would bail them out, but I'd let them roast on the fire for a little bit. It's this is not a good way for them.
Yeah, it's just you have to weigh out the consequences, whether you let the daughter suffer for that and life lesson, but at the same time other people got screwed. So you kind of have to balance that out, and hopefully the people who were done wrong by get at least compensation.
All right, so staying on the pro scene, I can't make heads or tails of this. Shawn, have you seen the ratings for AEW versus NXT last night?
Yeah, I think I saw it just after I got home. Some like 900 plus thousand versus 700 plus thousand. AEW winning. I think also a 31% difference between the two.
No, have you seen either show?
I saw AEW last night.
You saw it in its entirety?
Yes.
Yeah. So as far as NXT goes, I know one of the matches that took place was, I think, Undisputed Era went over Gallus. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then Keith Lee had won, I think, a Fatal 4-Way. Actually, I'm just going to bring up the results as opposed to looking like I'm guessing at this. But let me ask you this. Are you missing NXT? It's not on live up here in Canada?
Yeah, I think things would be a lot different. At the same time, we don't really see what the ratings are in that regards, because those numbers are only reflecting the U.S. But yeah, I'd like to see what would happen if NXT was live on Sportsnet, going head-to-head with TSN and AEW. Who would get the win, if we want to actually say a Wednesday Night War, who would actually win that one? But I think it is kind of hurting the Canadian scene for fans, where they only have an option for AEW on Wednesday nights and have to get a hour-long version on Sportsnet on Friday before SmackDown, or just wait for the WWE Network to put it on Thursday and sit back and watch it on demand.
Yeah, I tell you this, and this is being honest. I don't know how many times I've PVR'd NXT on Thursdays because it's the full 2 hours, and then have deleted it before watching it because I've just read the results, Highlights from yesterday: Keith Lee becomes #1 contender for the NXT North American Championship. Finn Balor was challenged Johnny Gargano to a match at NXT TakeOver Portland. So that looks to be official. Undisputed Era over Gallus in the first round of the Dusty Classic. Austin Aries, former Evolve champion, he defeated
Theory.
Austin Theory. Who did I say?
Aries.
Oh, geez. No way double in this one. Austin Theory, former Evolve champion there. Imperial went over the Forgotten Sons first round of the Dusty Classic, and then we had looks like a 6-woman tag team match. Rhea Ripley, Toni Storm, Candice LeRae, Kaylee Ray, Bianca Belair, and Io Shirai. Somebody said that Bianca and Io are going at each other, so they're wondering who's going to turn face. So would you turn Io back face, or would you keep her as a heel and maybe put Bianca as a face for a change?
I tried Bianca as a face. Io has been fantastic as a heel, and it would be something different for Bianca. And her husband is part of I was going to say Private Party, but
that's the other team.
Yeah, that's the other guys.
Street Profits. Yes. So, anyways, yeah, I think Bianca to me is permanent badass. So I think always keep her heel. But yeah, that was NXT. And again,
I missed one part with the results, and the match might not have been that overly spectacular, but Mia Yim defeated Kaden Carter. But probably the big thing that came out of that was after they sort of congratulated each other and did the whole sportsmanship thing, Chelsea Green, Canadian,
just reading that now, yeah.
Actually, came out and attacked both of them, and then ended up teaming up with Robert Stone, who is doing a managerial thing, and it's sort of a sports agent, and he said he signed Chelsea as his first thing as part of taking over NXT. And people not familiar with Robert Stone, that was Robbie E from
Impact.
And I read also that Stacey Carter sent out a tweet congratulating them both being together and being a awesome idea and booking of NXT to put them together. And there's been some back and forth congratulations and thank yous between the three of them.
You said Stacey Carter. You mean Dixie Carter?
Dixie Carter. See, you screw up a name, I'll screw up a name.
I was going to say it
was not Jerry Lawler's ex.
How is the cat relevant in 2020? That makes absolutely no sense at all. But anyways, yeah, I bypassed that because Mia Yim it looked like she was out there just to put on a match. I didn't realize until I went down to the picture, Chelsea Green sitting there. But what do you think of Chelsea Green's new attitude and look? Anyways, it's completely different from what she was in Impact.
Yeah, it's definitely not the crazy Laurel Van Ness sort of thing. I was actually kind of wondering what was going to happen with Chelsea because the last 2 weeks she'd actually been with Raw, her and Deonna Purrazzo, and each of them did singles matches. She had her match against Charlotte Flair and also Sarah Logan on Main Event this past week. So I wondered if they ended up bypassing TV on NXT to go to Raw and be just sort of not part of the main women, but
maybe just to get that exposure, right?
On Raw and eventually work her way up. But then with what they did last night, obviously her and probably Deonna are going to be with NXT still.
Which is not a bad thing considering the fact that NXT is still loaded with talent down there.
For sure.
And as far as the women's division goes, and I'll touch base on that probably about 2 minutes. Quickly running down the results at AEW.
Well, I started off with Hangman Page and Kenny Omega defeating. Oh, great! I just had it a moment ago.
This is what it's like second week of January, actually. All right, I've got it up here in front of me. So Kenny Omega, Adam Page defeated Private Party. You're having a hard time.
I just talked about them, parties, and I watched that. And then also Pac got on the screen and was beating up Michael Nakazawa and wanted his rubber match against Omega, which will probably come up on the 29th of February for Revolution.
Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see where that goes. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing it. Like, I love Omega, and Pac is completely different from who he used to be back in WWE. Rio defeated Chris Statlander.
There was a lot of interference with the women because Brandy Rhodes was on commentary, and you had Awesome Kong and Mel come out. Plus, they revealed who their fourth person was, which is Luther or something like that from Japan.
Yeah, from way back in the early 90s. Apparently, he was part of the Canadian independent wrestling scene as well back then.
In Stampede.
Yeah, so that was, I looked at the guy and I was like, who is he? And the next thing I know, I think Jericho had referenced him on Instagram or something like that. So I looked him up. It's like, yeah, he was way back in the early 90s. Christopher Daniels went one-on-one with Sammy Guevara, the Spanish God. Lucha Brothers in Dustin and Cody went at each other. I'll do the highlights of the match. I'm just going to go through what was there, though.
Yeah, because with the thing with Christopher Daniels, he was actually distracted by Pentagon and then later on attacked by the Dark Order, and he got rescued by the rest of SCU and also the Young Bucks. And then Pentagon came out for the tag team match with his brother and also Dustin and Cody.
Yeah. How about this? How about what are your thoughts from last night? I'll start with my top three. Number one, DDP was a surprise, and maybe I'll get your comments on this as well. Your thoughts on MJF and DDP and the segment, to me, not getting over as well as it should have. Was it the crowd in Memphis? Was it DDP being too old? Was it MJF having too much on his plate as being the next kind of Roddy Piper, as they keep calling him, and not being able to deliver? To me, the segment itself, I understood where they're going with it, and I understood the whole play with Cody and MJF and where they're heading and stuff like that. But to me, the segment fell flat. You agree or disagree?
I think it fell flat for sure, but I'm surprised DDP was doing what he's doing. But it was a good segue because of the relationship between all of them related to Cody. Unfortunately, as much as people in our area in Buffalo and all that might love Butcher, Blade, and Bunny because we know them, they haven't been really gotten over with the AEW crowd. And it's kind of weird that they're henchmen for MJF, but he also has Warlow. Like, why do you need a single person, but then a faction to go after people and be your muscle? And I think that possibly threw things off for that segment. People, I think, popped for the Diamond Cutter, but beyond that, it's unfortunate that it's maybe the presentation.
Okay, so before I get to the main event of the night, your thoughts on, I guess, the women's division as a whole in AEW. They've got talent, they've got marketability as far as some of the looks. They've got, the superstars like you had mentioned, Big Swole and stuff like that, who are known on the independent scene, as well as Rise, Shimmer, places like that. But to me, it's another part of AEW which has fallen flat right now, is the women's division as a whole. This seems to be misguided, no direction whatsoever.
Yeah, it's interesting that in the war that they're claiming, NXT has the more dominant women's division. I don't know why, even though Brandy has said, "Oh, we're going to focus on women, bring that to light, and like make it prominent," just like they want to do with the tag team and the singles. And they're falling short on the women, and maybe it's because they have more inexperienced women on the card. Where, yeah, Allie has a lot of experience, and Awesome Kong, but who else is on there that people can gravitate to? You don't see Rio that much. Britt Baker, people think is really sloppy and hasn't done much. Statlander, Brandy, yeah, it's not really clicking yet.
So if you were to take the AEW NXT war and you were to take Riho, put her in a ring against Rhea Ripley, I mean, she's going to get destroyed.
Exactly.
I mean, and this is somebody who's skilled.
NXT are supposed to be lower than the main roster women. And when that is beating hands down what AEW has to present.
Yeah. I guess the sad thing to me about the whole war in the NXT versus AEW is the fact is when you don't have NXT, you've still got that main brand. You still have the Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Samoa Joes, Daniel Bryan's, guys like that. AEW doesn't have that. AEW, this is what they're presenting. They don't have nothing else to fall back on. So if you've got Kenny Omega versus Pac in the ring and it's not delivering, there is nothing else behind it. Now, you've got obviously Jericho at the helm, and he's been through a lot of wars and, as far as promotions, everything else goes. But Shawn, your thoughts on the main event segment of AEW last night and the whole Moxley Jericho thing? Because again, I sound like a broken record, but to me that fell flat as well.
Yeah, because when they instantly had Moxley saying yes, I'm joining, and started having a party, I don't know what happened, but it just seemed to be constantly being dragged out with nothing going on, and it was like, okay. Obviously, they're going to pull the trigger and do something, but why are they delaying it so long? And then I got thinking, okay, maybe they're not pulling the trigger and they're doing that, so let's just end the show. And for whatever reason, it looked like 10:01, 10:02, that's when they finally smashed the bottle and Moxley ran into the audience to celebrate and end the show. But it was just really awkward and a dead pause. So I have no idea whether they were just off on their timing or what the plan was.
Yeah, so the one thing about Thursday Night Throwdown I wanted to have it was be different. And every other, podcast, everything else out there is going to talk about, the main brands and, AEW versus NXT. It's because, AEW is fairly new and I'm excited about the guys who are wrestling there the same way I was when they were wrestling in Japan and stuff like that. But I was going to go into Impact, which is coming up this weekend. So Impact Hard to Kill, which is pay-per-view taking place on Sunday night, as well as NXT TakeOver UK Blackpool 2 is taking place on Sunday at noon. I was going to go through the cards, but I mean, a lot of podcasts will do that as well. Shawn, I know you have a podcast that you love the main brands on. So Scumbags of Wrestling, shout out to Shawn there. For whatever we don't talk about, definitely listen to the Scumbags of Wrestling podcast, because I know he loves his main brands and stuff like that. But your thoughts just on the Impact card, Tessa versus Sami Callihan, who you think is going to win?
Well, it would be wrong for them, and I just actually recorded the podcast part for this one.
How do people find that podcast?
Pardon?
How do people find that podcast?
Well, it's available on Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you can get your podcast from. I'm on a dozen different things, so it's Scumbags Wrestling. But they're listing it as an intergender match. Yes, it is, but it's still just a wrestling match, the way they've been doing things. But because of them specifying intergender and all that, and it's for the Impact World Championship, I think Impact Wrestling is going to pull the trigger and give a major male-dominated belt for the first time to a woman. Yes, WWE did it with China for the Intercontinental title, but this is the main title being put on a female. Tessa Blanchard is going to be the first one to do it. And they kind of gave it away also when they did their awards last week. And they had a separate category for the knockouts, and Taya Valkyrie won that. But for the Impact Star of the Year, it was Tessa Blanchard. It wasn't another guy. It was Tessa. So she's kind of the man of Impact Wrestling. And so I think they played their hand, and we know that's going to happen. If not, you're going to have a lot of ticked off fans by not doing it.
The downside about the whole Tessa angle is the fact is I'm a huge fan of hers, personality, who she is outside of the ring, everything else. But I don't necessarily know if it's the right decision. I don't know if it's going to turn fans off of Impact or if it's going to keep fans liking Impact and maybe more fans watching Impact. But and the question is, who beats Tessa? Because if you're going to do a storyline like that and all of a sudden Sammy gets beat by Tessa, the only thing I can think of is Sammy has to beat Tessa to get that title back.
Unless somehow they pull some switcheroo later on by the summertime where the title gets declared vacant because something happens.
I'm not a big fan of that stuff.
Oh, no, but I can see Impact Wrestling doing something like that so they can make their mark putting a female with the title, But as you said, how do you get it off her?
Yeah, so you have from WWE Storyline Booking to WWE NXT UK Takeover 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 matches taking place this Sunday at 12 p.m. WWE Network. Shawn, your thoughts on two of them? UK Championship for the women, Kaylee Ray, Toni Storm, Piper Niven. Kaylee Ray's still going to be champ, or is she going to lose it?
I see Kaylee Ray retaining the title, and yeah.
And then Joe Coffey versus Walter for the NXT UK Championship. Who's your pick?
Isn't that also Imperium and Gallus members against each other?
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think there's definitely going to be an end to the match, but I think both factions are going to get involved, and it would be crazy to have Walter drop the belt at all in the next little while. So Walter's going to retain, but I see both factions getting involved. And just a quick note, after TakeOver, Steve Austin has his third podcast, talk show, whatever they're calling it, Broken Skull Sessions, and that's going to have Kane on it.
Big Red Machine, eh?
Yeah, so that the 12th is going to be huge. You can watch Blackpool, watch Kane, and then go watch Impact.
Yeah, so I'm going to agree with Shawn on the Walter pick, but I'm going to go Toni Storm, and the reason for it is because I saw someplace apparently Rhea Ripley is going to be facing Toni Storm upcoming, and I'm going to say it's going to be champion versus champion at that point. So,
do you think that's going to be Worlds Collide on?
That's what it was announced
the night before Royal Rumble.
Yeah, so I know it was Worlds Collide, and I know it was the two of them facing off, but at this point, it's Rhea Ripley champion versus Toni Storm non-champ. So I think you're going to be seeing champion versus champion in this one. And I love Toni Storm. She's tough, but not Rhea Ripley tough. So I don't think you're going to be seeing the championships on the line, but I think it'd be cool to see champion versus champion. So I'm going to say Toni Storm this coming Sunday. From there, we're going to go into Canadian Independent Wrestling. Shawn, you probably saw the news from Midwestern Wrestling. It's maybe it's an East Coast thing. I don't know. And my apologies to the great staff there at Midwestern Wrestling. So yeah, I can do it if I slow down. But they had made a post earlier today, and they had said that testing, just making sure you're still following the page. Major show announcement later today. It's going to be amazing. And just as we're doing this podcast tonight, they had posted on Instagram as well. Shawn, you got that in front of you there?
Yes, I just brought it up. It says, Happy New Year. Midwestern Wrestling is the premier company for sports, entertainment, and independent wrestling in Midwestern Wrestling. Our first event in Listowel on November 9th was amazing, and so many friends, a full house. Struggled to put 50 people in Parkview before. Now they had over 300 people at their first event. Incredible sponsors, local from Listowel, and so all the thanks are there. But the major part of it is Midwestern Wrestling is back in Listowel Saturday, March 28th at the beautiful Parkway Gardens. Doors open at 6 p.m. and the first bell is at 7. They've booked a great show with some returning talent, some new talent that has reached out to them after hearing about their first great show, and some more handpicked personalities to fill an amazing card for their fans. Their main event for the inaugural Heavyweight Championship is going to be between the Wrestling Machine, Tyson Dukes, and Mr. Punch Kick Chop, Tarek. And so you can get your tickets. They're going to be 2 for $25. Or the regular price is $15 in advance and $20 at the door. So, yeah, it's great deals. And you can get more information by following their social media and watch for announcements on Instagram, Midwestern Wrestling 2019, on Twitter at Wrestling Mid, and Facebook is going to be Midwestern Wrestling. So right there, that's the huge announcements from them. Doug, thank you for sharing that with us. I saw you tag me in it, so it's great to be able to share that with fans. And there's a lot of independent wrestling coming up in 2020.
Yeah, so you can see this is the reason I love this new technology type video thing live, because I can, you can see the Instagram.com thing down below there to follow Midwestern Wrestling on Instagram. See, I said it, no problem at all. I just don't think about it. But I think what would be cool. So March 28th is the date. I think it'd be cool to do a live, maybe Thursday Night Throwdown combined with the Scumbags of Wrestling, do like a dual podcast that day. And I'll make sure I bring the Yeti with me this time, and maybe pay attention to Shawn's messages on Facebook. But it was fun last time. Jordan James, he's got to pipe a little bit down. Maybe sedate him before the event, but whatever the case is, yeah, looking forward to it. Listowel was a great atmosphere. It was very interesting, and I'll say this as a fan, but as somebody who's overheard some of the stuff going on that night. I was in the washroom at one point in time, and some of the locals were very, not interested, but they're very, what's the word? It's
impressed.
Thank you. Impressed. Yes, impressed. One of those nice guys. But they were very impressed with how they had taken that venue and turned it into a wrestling facility. I mean, I'll remember walking into the venue and being greeted at the door by Doug, saying, make yourself at home and, set up where you guys need to and this and that, and seeing the setup. And it was great, a great atmosphere, kids all over the place, people having fun. Us as fans interacting with the talent themselves, when they're doing the autograph signings, everything else. Shawn's probably got video still in the Scumbags of Wrestling Facebook group of that night.
The whole event is 2 parts on our Scumbags of Wrestling YouTube channel. So you can see the first and second half of the shows. And I'm pretty sure Midwestern Wrestling also has that on their social medias as well.
Yeah, Doug says thanks for the love, guys. So thanks for existing.
He said that we have an open door with them, and we want to definitely promote as much indie wrestling for anybody. But yeah, we're definitely going to be doing all out, as you said. Show. We did a podcast on the way to Listowel, previewing the show. We're going to do pre-show, intermission, and post-show, then a post-show trip back to London, doing podcasts. We're going to have it covered fully, and if then the Thursday before, if we can get people in here to promote it, we'll do so.
Yeah, so open invitation to anybody at Midwestern Wrestling the Thursday before the event to be on the show here. Like I said, anybody can focus on the main portions of the wrestling industry, the WWEs, the Impacts, the ROHs, the New Japans, everything else. My main focus, and you'll see it happening over the weeks, is I really want to focus on the Canadian independent wrestling scene, and then focus on what we do love as well. Like, I love New Japan, so you'll hear me talk about New Japan and stuff like that. But Canadian independent wrestling is one of those things that will always exist, and it's always going to be where a lot of these guys come from. You know what I mean?
Can I give another shout out to another show?
Yeah, go ahead.
So when we were in Midwestern, we also ran into Aaron Sisson, and he just recently started Chem Valley Wrestling. This Friday, January 10th, at River City Vineyards in Sarnia, they're having their second show under the Chem Valley official title. And some of the matches include Eli Everfly against Tyson Dukes, Ethan Dukes against Sarnia Councilor Brian White. There's going to be a 6-way match featuring Alec Realm, Kyle Boone, Alex Weir, El Reverso, Justin Sane, and Rodney Matthews. There's a couple tag team matches, including the tag team titles on the line, Fight or Flight against Death Threat Army. Stone Rockwell is going against Jimbo Jones. And the main event has Cody Diener defending the Chem Valley Championship against Tyler Turba. And so that's Scratch This Friday in Sarnia. So doors open, or first bell is at 7:30. So there's tickets still available, and check out Aaron and Chem Valley.
Yeah, so on top of that, and you said that is tomorrow night, right?
Yes, tomorrow night, Friday.
So On top of that, across the Canadian independent wrestling scene, LDDC in Montreal, Quebec tomorrow night as well. 365 Pro Wrestling is alive and well, taking place Campbell River, BC on Friday. Thrash Wrestling in Merritt, BC. The 11th, which is the Saturday, XZW in Sorel, Quebec. Thrash Wrestling in Kamloops, BC. PWA, the one and only PWA now, taking place in Calgary, Alberta. Followed up by 365 Pro Wrestling, which used to be PWA, taking place in Courtenay, BC. That's the last event on the Saturday. And then the Sunday has 3 events, NSW, so New School Wrestling, Hamilton, Ontario, 365 Pro Wrestling in Sayward, BC, and then Battle War 71, Montreal, Quebec on the 12th as well.
I also have on Saturday, Revolution Women's Wrestling happening in Mississauga. And so it's an all-women's event highlighted by Casey Spinelli and Rebel taking on Nova and former Impact Wrestling women's champion Allison Kay.
Oh, wow. That'd be a huge match right there.
So it's all women's thing. There's Queens of Punk, Jody Threat, and Addie Starr teaming to go against Caitlin Diamond and Masha. Bianca Corelli is going to have Shiloh in her corner, taking on CC Moss in a rematch from their first event. Divya, who we saw at Midwestern, she's going to go against Aaliyah. Bubblegum Princess Alexia Nicole takes on the Selfie Queen Jessie Mack. So it's a whole women's event, and that's in Mississauga at Battle Arts.
So you can reach the show, Thursday Night Throwdown at Outlook.com for any events, results. You want to be on the show, hit us up there. You can hit up myself personally. No, that is the wrong one. Still learning this. There we go. Chris at cwnonline.ca to get in touch with me as far as the CWN online website goes. If you go and click on this, which is the hashtag WeAreCIW on the CWN website, that will take you to all the events I know about as far as Canadian independent wrestling goes. This weekend, from the looks of it, I think maybe 10, 11 shows across Canada that we know about. Next weekend, from just doing, adding these shows to the page, next weekend looks to be absolutely stacked. I mean, shows happening all over the place. I think the 17th, 18th, and 19th. Shawn, what is the best way to get in touch with you if they have any results or any news, anything like that?
Definitely hit up our Facebook page, Scumbags of Wrestling, or you can email me, scumbagswrestling@gmail.com. Last week, I started a brand new segment, not just having our podcast, which is Scumbags Wrestling, available on multiple platforms, as I already said. We also, when I get there and they do matches, I have a video series called The Production Line, where you can see matches of the future stars being built at Tyson Duke's Wrestle Factory. So you're going to see guys like Jordan James, Alec Realm, Kyle Boone, and up-and-comer guys like
Frankie War,
and even Ethan Dukes, Tyson's own son. That happens on The Production Line, and so that happens on our YouTube channel. But as I was going to say, this past weekend, I started another video series called the Ontario Indie Road Trip, where you can find out what's happening in Ontario and support independent wrestling, because it is huge, and indie wrestling is amazing to see live, and you get up close and personal with the talent. You're only a couple seats away from the ring, as opposed to a major show, whether it's Impact Wrestling, AEW, or WWE. You're further away and you don't really get the interaction with the talent. Independent wrestling, wherever it is, you get that feel, and that's what's going to inspire the next generation to step into that ring.
Yeah, I tell you this, it's cheaper than the movies. I went to go see Star Wars with my wife. Holy crap. We probably spent a good $70, which is probably $30, $40 more than going to see an indie show for 2 people. So, and anyway, Shawn is right. Canadian independent wrestling is not going anywhere. Follow it where you can. It's all across Canada. And if you can't find it, hit up the Scumbags of Wrestling or hit up CWN online, and you guarantee you will find a show happening that weekend, probably within 2-3 hour driving distance at least.
Yeah, don't be afraid to hop in the car. It's awesome to check out.
Yeah, we carpool all the time too. And Shawn's really good as far as the Scumbags of Wrestling. If all of a sudden there was a show taking place, like I know he had asked me if I wanted to go to the what's the next one for Smash happening in Toronto?
Any Given Sunday 8, and that's going to be on the 23rd. And there's stuff happening here in London at Fanshawe on the 7th, which is New Beginnings. And a lot of things are going to go between the two shows. Like one of the big matches for that show at Fanshawe has Carter Mason against Tyson Dukes in a street fight. It was announced today that the winner of that match is going to go to Any Given Sunday 8 to face Kevin Bennett for the Smash Championship.
There you go.
So I'm already going to Any Given Sunday 8. I got a couple extra tickets if people are looking to join me. We're doing a carpool, and it's at the Rec Room in Toronto.
Yeah, so best way to get in touch with Shawn right there and right here. Scumbags of Wrestling, Facebook.com, groups, Scumbags of Wrestling. One other thing I was going to mention just before we head out here, of note I had in Canadian Independent Wrestling. Shawn, did you hear about Death Proof Fight Club hidden in London on March 28th as well?
Yeah, so definitely something to check out if you're in the area for London. I know I won't be there now because of the confirmation of being in Listowel. But yeah, if you cannot join us on the road to Listowel, I definitely encourage you to check out Death Proof.
Yeah, one of the other things I was going to talk about was Midwestern Wrestling, unofficial, but now it is official. So the last thing I'll touch base on is Femme Fatale 23 taking place. It's taking place on February 21st. It's like a mini version of the summit happening there in Quebec, but actually happened in Ottawa. My apologies. Right now they've got announced Lufisto, Alexia Nicole, Maeve O'Farrell, which is new to me, Priscilla Kelly, who is the fiance or wife of Darby Allin from AEW.
Maeve O'Farrell was at the summit as well.
Was she? Maeve O'Farrell?
Yep.
Who was she?
She might have been in the dark match with, or the opening match.
Oh, no, I think she was. Hold on a second.
She was at the summit. I know that.
Yeah, I recognize her. I just don't remember what part of the summit she was in. Yeah, I just brought her up. I do recognize her, though. Nicole Savoy, Kimberly, and Casey Smith-Elliott are part of that as well. So if you're in the Ottawa area in February, check that out. It's combined with Femme Fatale, or Femme Fatale. Not sure if what the pronunciation on that is in C4. So February 21st. So Canadian Independent Wrestling, check it out. I mean, I can't say it enough. And anyways, this has been a good episode. Like I said, I want to start focusing a lot more on Canadian Independent Wrestling. The more I can learn, the more we'll talk about. Shawn is gifted as far as the local scene goes, and then even more so, especially with all the new things he's coming up with and trying out. And, you can find them on YouTube and Facebook and Anchor and everything that he's already mentioned. The one thing I want to start doing as well on a weekly basis is I want to take one Canadian independent wrestling promotion and I want to focus on that promotion in almost like a spotlight. So a 2-3 minute spotlight, who they are, how they were founded, why they were founded, what part of the country they run in, what was their biggest show, highlights, who has come from there. PCW in Winnipeg, for example, Kenny Omega, that was his stomping ground, to me, Smash Wrestling is very good for a lot of these guys who you might not see 2-3 years, like a Tarek or even a Carter Mason, but to me, they're always going to be Smash Wrestling guys. But to a lot of other people, they're going to be FLQ or Barry Wrestling or whatever the case may be, and Shawn, you probably feel the same way. It's because you've been a Smash Wrestling fan longer than I have, and not saying I'm not a fan, but you've been following them a lot longer. You were part of the Northern, 2 years ago when Matt Riddell, Mia Yim were there. Yep. You remember Johnny Gargano as Smash Wrestling champion, and now he's getting ready to fight Finn Balor in a huge match, So
yeah, the first event that I went to for Smash was at Fanshawe College, and had Johnny Gargano against Joey Ryan in the main event. Yeah,
they've also Smash Wrestling's also featured Dalton Castle as far as Fanshawe Wrestling goes. The Dark Order, the Blade and the Butcher, Ali, all these people, they've all been independent. And this is just because we're London, Ontario boys. So this is what is familiar and local to us. But we have driven to Toronto. Shawn has driven, to Windsor to go see a show, everything else. Carpools, everything else. But if you have the chance to go see Canadian Independent Wrestling, see some of these guys, see some of the guys that they've brought in, like, who was it? We saw, what was that main event we saw at the Impact Wrestling at London Music Hall? Was it Sammy Callahan and John Morrison?
Yeah.
Yeah, and now you've got them in two separate companies, so enjoy it. It's not going to be around forever as far as some of these promotions go, and at the same time, it's not going to be around forever as far as who's in these promotions. I guarantee, if I were to take a pick of who one of my favorites is Tarek, I don't see him lasting in Canadian independent wrestling in the next 2 years. I see him
to try out for WWE during the SummerSlam weekend.
Yeah. And closing note, I don't know if you saw Sebastian Suave picked up 4 awards for the most hated wrestler in Canada. You see that?
Yeah.
He's
very proud of that. And I think he definitely earned it for Barry Wrestling, because if you look at what he did earlier in the 2019, he had his lovely little sit-in, and he refused to move. They even cleared out the whole church. I believe that's where they're in Barry. And they took down the ring around him. They took down all the seats, and he still stayed there, even though the rest of the pillars were trying to convince him to leave. And so if that's any indication of some of the things that he was doing during the rest of Barry Wrestling and all over Ontario and Quebec where he was wrestling, yeah, well deserved.
Yeah. So we're just going to end the show. Shawn, your Scumbags of Wrestling is up on the screen right now. How many members you got going on?
We picked up a whole bunch actually just recently. So we're about 385. I'd love to reach 400 very soon.
Yeah, see if we can plan. The goal is to try to hit 500 by the summertime, eh?
That'd be nice. Yeah, especially if we can do a bunch of road trips and hosting different events and highlighting them.
Yeah, so Scumbags of Wrestling, hashtag We Are Scumbags, and then you'll see the banner down below there, facebook.com/group/Scumbags of Wrestling. That is Shawn's baby there. I'm going to show you mine just quickly, and then we'll end the show here. I'm still learning this, but I am getting quicker, which is kind of cool. Yeah, so there is mine there. That is CWN, and best way to get in touch with it. So my daughter is messaging me. It's right there, cwnonline.ca. It's more or less a news site, but you'll find listings, results, profiles are coming as far as Canadian independent wrestling scene goes. So it's kind of my thing, just my hobby that I like to do on the side. So, but this has been another edition of the Thursday Night Throwdown, and I'm just going to stop the split screen. Shawn, anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, I think we're good. As I said, get to independent wrestling, and if you're sitting at home this weekend, on Sunday, you got a whole day of stuff with NXT and Impact and Kane on Steve Austin. So enjoy wrestling wherever you can.
Yeah, I'm going to start reaching out to promoters just to try to hype their shows before the weekend hits. Not this weekend, but if you have a show coming up that weekend, that's what I mean. Best way to get in touch with us, Thursday Night Throwdown, Outlook.com. You want to be part of the show, you have ideas for the show, you want to replace the host, go ahead. I got thick skin, so... But anyways, best way to get in touch with us, Thursday Night Throwdown at Outlook.com. Shawn, Scumbags of Wrestling, thanks for being part of the show once again.
As always.
And we will see everybody next week.
Have a good one.